Okay, we're going to be taking a look at Mark McLaughlin's War and Peace. This is a new edition of the game published by One Small Step Publishers, and the original game by Avalon Hill was done in 1980. Now the credits for this edition are shared by Mark McLaughlin and John W. Gant. Now John has done a heck of a good job on this new edition. A lot of work has gone into it. It's actually been a project that's been ongoing for several years. And I will mention the man who made the map. Map encounters are done by Antonio Pinar. And as you're going to see, it's very well done indeed. But to understand any comments I make about the new edition, we have to take a look at the old Avalon Hill 1980 edition first. Okay, I no longer have the 1980 edition, so I'm just going here from screenshots from my Mac. That's what the cover of the rulebook looked like. It was typical Avalon Hill at the time. The game came in the book-style bookcase box, and therein lay some of the problems. It was a big game, over 500 counters, and you were hard-pressed to get those counters into that box, and at least with an efficient sortation method. From time to time, there were several articles on the game. People had contributed articles and talked about a campaign game. Mark McLaughlin himself contributed several articles to the General. It was never a smash hit game, but it did fairly well. And there's a typical article done by Mark that appeared in the General. So there was always a little bit of buzz about this game. There's another article. And over the years, John Gant took some of these articles and the errata and sort of pieced them together and made this new edition. Here's a picture of the old map. It was very, very plain. It looked a lot like the Third Reich map. Now the Avalon Hill map came in 4 pieces, and they were mounted, and when you got the maps inside the box along with the counters and the rules, well, you were trying to pack a lot into a small bookcase format. And I think that is why in the end I never really warmed up to the game. It was a good game, but I think Avalon Hill was pushing it by trying to put such a large game into the small bookcase format. The counters, there's well over 500 of them, were a nightmare to sort. Now this fellow has taken, just gone to the baggy system. But if you go to that, it's very inefficient. And this was one of the problems I had with that edition of the game. For example, the French here are dark blue with a white silhouette, and the satellite powers are also dark blue with a yellow silhouette. What was the problem? Well, setting up a scenario took a long time, because you had to look for, let's say, a unit that looked just like the French satellite unit, and it would have like a little W on the bottom left, which meant it was a Württemberger, or an H for Hanover. And sorting through these counters was just a nightmare to set up a scenario. And the board was rather physically small. I just felt they were trying to pack a heck of a lot into a very small box. And eventually, that's why I got rid of the game. So that's that for the old 1980 Avalon Hill edition, which I never really warmed up to, mainly because of its production values. It was just too big a game fitting into too small a box. The map was very small, and the counters were a nightmare to sort. So let's fast forward, 40 years now? 2020, it's March, and the world is going through the horror of the COVID-19 virus, and we're all homebound. I'm in today, and no better way to celebrate than to learn a new game. So that's what I'm doing. And I spoke with John on the phone this morning. We talked a little bit about the game, because I wanted to make sure I got any facts I state in the video correct. Now, I'm not going to go through a playthrough or anything like that. This game is just too big. This is only an introductory video. The most I can show you is the board, the counters, tell you what's so good in this great package, this new version. And of Mark McLaughlin's War and Peace, which John has been so careful to put on. One Small Step Publishing. So this is the original game, but it's taken into account all the errata that has appeared in the general over the years. Minor quirks on the map have been corrected, and a whole new map done too. So let's begin with the map and tell you all the good things about it. Now, to give you an idea of the size of the map, much better than the Avalon Hill one, this is an IKEA table, and it's 7.5 feet long. And you can see that the game board takes a good portion of my table. I've even put up the flyleaf here to put charts and things on, and I'll get to those in a minute. But just to show you that the map is quite large, and now you don't have all those problems with the small map that existed in the Avalon Hill version. The Avalon Hill version had 4 maps, as I mentioned. This has 2. You say, what? Have they done any editing here? No, it's actually bigger. They've just split it into 2 like this. You put the 2 sections together, and of course you got a complete map. In the rules, they're calling this Map 1, Spain, Map 2, France, Map 3, Prussia, Austria, and Map 4, Russia. So if you know the game from 1980, you will know how to play this new game, because it's the same rules. It is not a remake or a redone game. It's still Mark McLaughlin's War and Peace from 1980, but fixed up. And all the irritating little things we didn't like in the 1980 version have been fixed. But let's zoom in closer on sections of the map so you'll see how beautiful it really is. Before looking at the map, I really should begin with the booklets that come with the game, because that'll give you a hint of what the game is all about. Of course, it comes with the standard rules, a brand new rules booklet, nice shiny paper. This one is 20 pages long, and it's much better than the Avalon Hill version. It's got full color illustrations, which is really nice. The information is formatted nicely, and a much easier booklet to read. As you can see from my other videos, I usually make copies of the booklet, which I have done. Then I can yellow it in and underline and highlight whatever I like. But the rules of play are easy to read, and I'm going from memory from 40 years ago. It's pretty well the way I remember the original game, with certain little quirks in the rules fixed up. You get this standard game scenario booklet, and there's 11, 12, there's 13 different scenarios here. And this game has something that no other Napoleonic game has. Another reason why I like it. All of the Napoleonic games that I've ever played, strategic, always start in 1805, when the man, Napoleon, is emperor. But this game has at least 2 other campaigns that are in the 1798-1796 period, before Napoleon became emperor. In fact, before he even became first consul. And I'll get to that when I show you the board. So you've got a lot of scenarios in here. Again, some little wee illustrations, but they're well laid out. And I had a question on playing scenario number 1. I think it was here, yeah. The Austrians set up on hex P23 and the French set up on hex P23. Well, guys, it's not rocket science. Just set up the French on P22 and the Austrians on P23, and you got yourself a game. It's obviously a typo or some little artifact that got in there on the scenario. But it in no way takes away from the game at all. You have to use a bit of common sense. It's just an errata. While I think of it, since I'm mentioning errata, John has a presence on Consim World where he's answering questions. He's also on Board Game Geek where he's clearing up errata, things like that. And no names mentioned, but there's one fellow who keeps asking question after question after question after question. And it makes you wonder, well, God, is this game errata, full of errata? No, it is not. As for the fellow who keeps asking the question, I would say, and John would say too, play the game first, then ask your questions. Try it. You can tell that this person, whoever he is, has not really even played the game. So you've got to play the game before you criticize it for errata. a project this size, sure, there'll be the odd typo in it, but none of it is game breaking. The game itself works. It worked 40 years ago, and it works now. Anyway, getting off topic. The third booklet you get is this Grand Campaign scenario booklet. It seems to be, what? It's 26 pages, and it's mammoth. And I must admit, I don't think I'll be taking on the Grand Campaign scenario anytime soon. It's going to be very challenging, and it'll take a heck of a long time to play it, I'm sure. But the neat thing is the campaign game starts to introduce lots of things that I'm interested in, which is the Naval Napoleonic conflict, which is also on the board. He's got a whole map here of the world and the global fleet movement. So that's going to be a whole game in itself. So let's look more closely at each country. There's Spain. Up there to France and England. Down there to Italy. Let me move the camera now. Up at the top there you've got Prussia, Grand Duchy of Warsaw, Austria here, Kingdom of Poland, way up to the east Russia, where that's Moscow there, and there's Vitebsk, there's the battlefield of Borodino, Vilna, and over here is that global naval movement that I was discussing. And this is really cool. Again, you get a whole other sub-game here, Napoleon in Egypt, with its own little wee map. I've only fooled around with a few counters on this one, and this one looks like a really cool scenario. Quite different than all of the others. I'll zoom in by changing the camera angle and the tripod, and we'll go closely look at the map so you can see how beautiful it really is. Okay, we're looking at the Russian campaign part of the map. This is the Niemen River here, where Napoleon crossed into Russia. There's the town of Vilna, where the Russians evacuated, and they fell back to Vitebsk here on the Dvina. There's Smolensk, where another major battle of the campaign was fought. And, of course, Borodino, west of the city of Moscow, which Napoleon did capture. Up there you've got St. Petersburg. You can see he's got these little port symbols for each of the places that are ports. I love the way he's done this little shadow showing the port where you can put the ships and stuff. It's just a beautiful map. You can see the rivers are done, and this was done different than the Avalon Hill version. It was corrected, and I think John and the boys made a good decision, because the original rivers flowed in the middle of the hex. That caused all kinds of problems. They wisely went to a hex-side rendition of the rivers, and makes the game much better. Thank goodness he did it. Slide down here to that Egyptian map. You can see Alexandria, where Napoleon landed, and Rosetta, where they found the famous Rosetta Stone, and of course Cairo. So this game here is a whole different ball game there. Let's just go into France there. Take a look at Paris, see all the rivers, and a whole mess of ports there at the Straits of Dover, England itself. Then you got these the turn tracks. Of course, there's the monthly one there and the one for the year. Production tracks, I imagine that's more for the campaign game. Down into Spain here, you can see that the terrain is very nicely rendered, and there's no problem to understand the movement. I like the idea of these little bridges across the major rivers. Overall, I give this map a very high rating. Now bear with me a moment as I speak again about the early Avalon Hill version. Now the Avalon Hill version, you got the standard Avalon Hill trays, which was 16 divisions, right? 4, 8, 12, 16, right. 16 divisions to get in the box. You could get 2 of them in there, but you were very hard-pressed to get all the counters into the box with efficient sortation. They'll get in the box, but they won't be very efficiently sorted. Now this new edition, as you can see, it's the much deeper box, Thank goodness for that. It's a large box. And you'll have no trouble getting a standard GMT type tray in the box. No problem at all. But when you get the two mounted maps in there, that box gets a little full. So warning in advance, if you do intend to use a GMT tray, you'll only have, well here you'll have 20 divisions to sort the counters. And I felt that still wasn't enough. So I went to a private company here in Ottawa called the Solutions Store, where they sell these solutions trays. I bought 2 of them, and I sorted them as efficiently as I can get them. These are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So I've got 28 divisions with these trays, and they will fit in the box side by side like that, which is kind of nice. So warning you in advance, with 550 counters or so, you're going to need a pretty efficient sortation method. Now, even with those trays, I still had to use some baggies for, the things you don't really care to be sorted, like the siege markers, demoralized markers, control markers. So I had, 6 small bags and 2 trays. Now, if anyone has the game and they've discovered a more efficient sortation method, I'm certainly willing to listen, that's for sure. But be forewarned, this is a big game. Okay, a few hints on how I sorted them. I more or less went by nationality because the colors of the counters are the important thing. So I've got the Austrians, 1s and 2s, Austrians, there's a lot of 1 and 2s, Austria's 5 to 20, and French, Poland, Prussia, Russia. That's probably the most efficient way to sort them. Let's take a look at the counters close, because they are beautiful. Okay, there's some typical counters in the game. Like I said, you get a lot of them, over 500 I think. And from top left to top right, there's some typical French infantry, a 1. And the counters are generic change. You have 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s. They're generic strength points. I believe each strength point represents about 5,000 men. There's some guards for the French. There's a typical Russian commander, Wittgenstein. There's a Russian fleet. There's some Russian infantry. That's cavalry, Austrian, white. More Austrians, 20 factors of them. There's a British fleet, British infantry. Good old Mamelukes. And you get the man himself, of course. You get Napoleon as a young man. They call him Bonaparte. Combat value of 2. And after he becomes emperor, Napoleon, and he's rated 3. Just another view of the counters you get. I've sorted them here into more or less nationalities. You can see the trays are quite full. You get a host of counters. You get a whole mess of French counters. Just the leaders alone take a whole tray practically. And you've got your Prussians. And again, I've got a second tray. And there's a lot of counters in this game. Some unsupplied counters. And of course these ones I've got in baggies. Siege markers. Well done. Campaign game. Like I said, I don't think I'll be getting to that anytime soon. Demoralized markers. So you certainly are not for want of counters in this game. So in my opinion, it scores high on all levels. The counters are excellent, the board is excellent, and the rules are very well done. I didn't mention the charts that come with the game. They're on high quality shiny cardboard. They're really nice. So that's the Allies leader display. This way you can keep the counter clutter down on the game. You get this French Alliance leader display, 1 sheet. French Allies leader display, another sheet. Then you get this larger one, which is the force pool display. I don't see it anywhere on the card, but I suspect that's probably for just the campaign game. Then you get this kind of a folder. It's got, a multitude of charts on it, on this side and this side. Okay, so a lot of your game charts are in this folder. And there was some confusion in the game parts in the rules as to which charts come, and I think some people got a game perhaps with some charts missing. There was a minor errata on this attrition table here. I think the title, the 1115 and the 1620 got reversed. Well, all I did was, copy this on my home printer, printed it out, and now I've got an attrition table that jives with the actual. No big deal there. So the manuals are very well done. As I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, I was not a great fan of the game back in 1980, but that was mainly because of the production values at the time. I think the game deserved better treatment than Avalon Hill gave it. And here it is, 40 years later, John W. Gant, through his efforts, and Mark McLaughlin, they've come up with I think a superior version of this game. If you liked the game back in 1980, you'll certainly like this edition. If you hated the game back in 1980, not sure I can help you there. You might not like it. But, perhaps like myself, I didn't care for the game in 1980 because of the production values. And the production values in this game have made it one that I want in my collection. Now, I will point out that it's an expensive game. I paid $129 US for this. That's a lot of money to a Canadian. Our dollar is less than the American, so it's one of my more expensive games. I think my most expensive game is, La Bataille de la Moscova was a $200 game. So this might be my second most expensive game. If you have any hesitation about getting it, don't be turned off by discussions and questions about errata. That's totally overblown. This game is not full of errata. Is there the odd typo? Sure. But John is supporting it on Consim. It's supported on Board Game Geek. You'll get your questions answered there. But I urge that you try the game first before you start asking questions, because there's a lot of moving parts in this game. So in closing, I just want to congratulate John Gant for doing a very good job on the game. I think it's an excellent kind of a remake. And I want to thank Antonio Pinar for giving us a very good map on the Napoleonic Wars. So that's it for War and Peace, and as always, thank you for watching.